If you're a guitarist, something you've always worried about is the tone of your guitar, and it's always a never-ending battle, and it's so hard to figure out the next steps to make your tone feel better or feel like it expresses you more. But in this video, you're going to figure out the best ways to make your tone match you and sound better to everyone else using simple steps. The first thing you have to do is kind of understand what a sound envelope is. When you initially strike a string, something called attack comes, which is the acceleration of the sound waves to the peak loudness, and then decay is where it goes down until it finds a rough volume where it sustains and then draws to a release, which we can divide up. And with guitar, we can make this really simple. This attack can almost never be changed, and this decay is also very hard to emulate too, but the sustain and release is what can really change a guitar tone. When we add more gain, whether it's through fuzz, distortion, or just a gain overdrive pedal, this sustain will last longer, and this decay will be a lot more drawn out, which makes your sound kind of loom over things more and can be really cool for chords that hang in the back, or a really nice aggressive sound that you can kind of hold out with nice vibrato lines and lead guitar playing. But this does not actually answer a lot of the questions about tone. It really only scratches the surface, which brings us into the next thing, which is the amp EQ, where we see bass, treble, and mids. The guitar is in general a mid-range instrument, so turning that mid knob will have some very, very large effects in what feels how present the guitar is. And what's really easy to figure out is the bass and the treble. If you want to feel your guitar more, feel more of the pulse in your heart, and make it feel lower when you get to these lower strings, you want to have your bass a little bit higher. And your treble knob is going to affect these higher strings a hell of a lot more and make them feel more present while having almost no effect up here. So understanding how those EQs can all play together is one way to really figure out where your tone shines the most, because the generalization you can make apart from that is more bass equals a little darker, a little muddier, and more treble equals a little brighter, and tweaking that mid is how you find the perfect balance in between what you want and what you have. And something that's still missing is what guitarists spend so much money on and so much time chasing, and that is effect pedals. Effect pedals can change your tone instantly with the click of a button like this. And what they effectively do is change the sound envelope, change some of those EQ things minorly, and they also change the actual sound wave of the instrument. So to understand some of these final things about what your tone really is, you have to leave the sound envelope in the EQ and actually get to the sound wave. When we play guitar normally, our wave looks like that. But let's say we click on a random pedal, and all of a sudden, our wave now looks like this. These waves at the same pitch are going to sound 159% different every single time. However, all of us guitarists know guitar is overly complicated and will never be that simple. So if we have two identical lines like this, how could we make them different when they're the same pitch? And that's going to be something called overtones. No matter what or where you're playing, there's always little notes of higher frequencies than the lower note that are being played out that give the actual texture of your sound. Which is why when you click on some type of chorus pedal, you might be hearing it doubled, but there's actually some changes going on in these highlighted overtones, and that is actually why a guitar sounds completely different from a piano even when they're playing the same note. So understanding this is how you can, one, use a synth to make really cool sounds, but it's also just understanding what is actually going on under the hood in your guitar, because it really is just this simple of waves over a main sound wave. And if you thought that's as simple as guitar tone was, you would be wrong, because there's practical things you can do to make your tone sound generally better. And the first one is all going to come down to your picking hand. When you have unnecessary notes ring out like this, you're completely changing the chord you're playing, and oftentimes it's dissonant and just sounds terrible. And it really sounds bad when you're trying to solo. And that's something a lot of beginners struggle with, is those ringing out notes. So by using your palm to kind of palm mute a lot of those unwanted frequencies, your playing will be a lot cleaner, and you can transition between chords a lot smoother by using that to have that super, super fast mute in between. And that makes a lot of people think your tone is better just because everything is cleaned up using your hand, which of course lies to something we all learn as a beginner, What you're doing with this hand is super important. Your tone can really be dictated by how hard you push on the fret. When someone is choking out their guitar, you can really tell because everything sounds forced and there's just this lack of finesse across everything. So the way you use your picking hand and fretting hand are really going to change the tone of what you're playing. And using these simple understandings about guitar, you can have the tone you've always been desiring to have almost instantly because it's really not that hard. It all comes down to experience, a couple technical tools, and just knowing the basics of how a sound wave works. And if you want more simple guitar content like this, subscribe for more.